Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
There's a dirt road not far from my house. I go biking or running. I often find myself running down this dirt road. And one morning, about a year ago or so, I was running down that road, and I came around the corner. I'm running along, and all of a sudden I see on the side of the road in the ditch, big old mountain of tires, big old pile of tires. So somebody just came by, presumably the night before, and just dumped them there because, well, getting rid of them the proper way is probably expensive or difficult. So they just, pulled up and just dumped them all right in the ditch by the side of the road, and someone else will take care of it because tires don't dissolve. And so Jay sent me a note. So Steve, check out the story from Milwaukee from WISN.com. And this is the kind of thing where they caught somebody doing this, and I'm glad they caught him. Man caught dumping tires at vacant Milwaukee lot, fined $3,855. He admitted that he would charge businesses $2 a tire, and I'll get rid of them for you. Pay me $2 a tire. So you pay this guy $2, he takes the tire, and you hope he's going to get rid of the tire properly. In fact, he was just driving into vacant lots in Milwaukee and dumping them. And I've spoken to people who try to pretty up the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit has got some vacant lots. It's got some vacant blocks. It's got whole neighborhoods that they're trying to revive. And they'll find a vacant lot and they'll clean it up, and somebody will come by overnight and dump a mountain of tires into it. And they got to clean it up again. So a 12 News investigation into a massive tire dump has uncovered that a man was actually caught dumping tires there earlier this year. Thousands of tires were dumped at a vacant industrial lot between November and January. The people who are doing this should be ashamed of what they're doing, said the Milwaukee mayor in response to a question about the WISN 12 News series. It affects people's quality of life. No one wants to wake up and see a pile of 5,000 tires, unless it's where they're supposed to be. But this is not where they're supposed to be. The 4-acre site was foreclosed on by the city in January after the former owner didn't pay property taxes for about a decade. Now, according to citations filed in court, it's been uncovered that the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources wardens caught a 41-year-old man from Milwaukee illegally dumping tires there. An anonymous tip led to a surveillance operation in January, and they say they caught the man in the act about 8 o'clock in the evening on January 6th, dumping hundreds of tires from a semi-trailer. So backs up the semi and starts dumping the tires 8 o'clock at night in January. However, he was not criminally charged. Instead, he was issued 5 DNR citations, Department of Natural Resources, for littering. Under the statute applied by the warden, the man could have faced a separate ticket for each tire. Instead, he was ticketed once for each of the 5 times they could document he'd done this based on surveillance video from the property. He admitted dumping approximately 4,000 used tires onto the property in total. So that means that they're finding him just a tad under $1 a piece for those, which means he still made a profit. According to the citations, he said he knew it was illegal, but the reason for the illegal dumping was because it saved him money. He added he picked up the tires from various auto shops and local residents and charged them $2 per tire. Another DNR report obtained by WISN 12 says the man told a warden he hadn't dumped any tires elsewhere, calling the particular property he was dumping them on the safest spot. So he thought that was the best place for him to dump these tires. A warden documented one of the business cards the man was carrying on him. It reads, tire recycling as to what he did. The card included a phone number, email address, and the phrase, lowest price in town. Lowest price in town. And, there might be a reason why the prices are so low, right? So no one answered the door Friday at the man's most recent address in Milwaukee. He didn't show up in court this week to dispute the littering tickets, fining him $771 each, and it comes out to be $3,855. When asked why they didn't do more or whether they reviewed the case with the Attorney General's office, the DNR told the TV station they couldn't comment because there's pending litigation. So maybe something else is happening, we just don't know. WISN 12 has filed additional open records requests to see what else they can find out. It's an ongoing story. The real question, of course, is this. The man dumps approximately 4,000 used tires onto a piece of property that's not his. He gets caught. They write him a bunch of tickets, and he winds up getting fined $3,855. Now, who is going to clean this up? And that's the crazy part. And there are situations where there are companies out there that create a giant mess, and they might even do it legally. But then the company goes out of business, or they move, or they go bankrupt, or something happens, and they leave behind this giant mess that someone else has to clean up. And that's what always bothers me when I hear stories like this, is they go, yeah, we got the guy, we fined him. Okay, now what's it going to cost to clean up that site? And shouldn't he pay for that? So maybe that's what they're getting at when they say there's pending litigation. Maybe they're going to actually do that. Clean the site up, dispose of the tires properly, and then hand him a bill and say, here, pay this. And that might be what they're doing, and that's certainly what I hope they're doing. But the example I like to tell people is, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, there's an area called the Copper Country. And there were copper mines there from the late 1800s into the 1900s. And then the last copper mine closed in the 1960s, basically. But many of them had closed prior to that. But copper mining is a messy process. You find the copper ore beneath the ground. You bust it up so you can load it into things to get it up to the surface. You take it to a stamping plant where you stamp it. And then you take what's been stamped and you wash it with chemicals, and then the chemicals help wash the copper out of it. And the problem is that when you're done with all these different processes, you wind up with what they call stamp sand. Stamp sand. Stamp sand is the crushed up rock that does not contain any copper anymore. And the question is, what do you do with this stamp sand that's been washed with all these chemicals? And some of these companies would just dump it. Big piles of stamp sand all over the place. And a couple of these companies that were near the shore of Lake Michigan along the Keweenaw Peninsula would dump it on the shore. And there are stamp sand beaches now up and down the Keweenaw Peninsula, and you're driving along, you see a black sand beach. That's stamp sand. That's not natural. And a lot of stamp sand got dumped into a place called Torch Lake. And sometime in the 70s or 80s, people noticed that there were a lot of sick fish in the lake. The fish did not look healthy. And the EPA came in and they studied it. They said, yeah, it turns out that these fish are ill, and so is the lake, from all the stamp sand and the chemicals that got dumped into it over all the decades. And by the way, a big portion of the shore of Torch Lake is also, likewise, covered in stamp sand. And so the EPA had to come in at taxpayer expense, and first of all, they fenced off a big section of the beach and said, you don't go there. Don't walk around on this beach. It's not good for you. Then they had to come in and remediate it by digging up a lot of it and hauling it away. And it was years before they finally said, yeah, we think we've got a handle on this. So if you look back to the process of making the copper, of getting the copper out of the ground and into a form that you could then pour ingots and so on. And by the way, that's what some of these things behind me are. This is a salesman's sample of a copper ingot. The real copper ingots would have been, I think, 40 pounds, about this big. But this is a smaller one right there, okay? Copper. It's very heavy. And it's not as heavy as the lead ingot I got right there, but I don't like to handle it for obvious reasons. And so if you looked at the cost of making the copper, when they dumped the stamp sand, the mines are like, hey, look, we can now sell this copper and make money. If they had been required to dispose of the stamp sand in an environmentally friendly fashion, it would have cost them a lot more. Could they have still made a profit? I don't know. But it's something that I've discussed this with many people. I'm not the first person to ask about this, because I remember people who lived in the town that's right along Torch Lake there and said, how much is this costing to clean up? Because, of course, as time went by and inflation, the dollars that are being used to clean it up required more of them than if it had been done earlier. But it's just one of those things where you look at this mess and what's it going to cost to clean up. And so the 4,000 tires dumped on that site, to pick them all up, haul them away someplace else, and dispose of them properly is going to cost more than $2 a piece. So it's a weird situation. And one of the things that a lot of people don't look at right away unless it's pointed out to them is that when you look at a situation, ask what something costs or what something's worth or what's the liability of something. Sometimes you do just need to look at it from a standpoint of society, okay? So this guy made $2 a tire to dump these tires there. someone else cleaning up the mess is going to presumably charge more than that because it's going to take more than that to pick them all up and haul them away and dispose of them. Now, you might go, he still made money, but this other entity over here lost money. And if you take the two and add them together, you wind up probably with a negative, meaning that this whole entire fiasco was a waste of money. And a lot of the money that got wasted was taxpayer money. And presumably, the only people who came out ahead were the people who were giving this guy their tires for $2 a piece, when to get rid of them properly probably costs more. But I don't blame them if this guy came along and said, no, I take care of these things properly. I figured it out. I've broken the code. I've got a tire hack, which isn't what it sounds like. But they got the guy, and he's been fined. And the question is, are they doing more? We don't know yet. So, Jay, thanks for sending it from WISN.com. Man caught dumping tires at a vacant Milwaukee lot has been fined $3,855. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life.